today's webinar, which is publishing census data twice as fast with the Office for National Statistics and the Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency. My name is Anya Maguire. I'm the CEO of the Sensible Code Company, and we're your hosts for today. We've created an index of the topics we're proposing to cover. We'll welcome you and cover some housekeeping items. We'll talk about the Office for National Statistics Census 2021 Create a Custom Dataset, which was launched in late spring. We'll also talk about the Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency's Flexible Table Builder for its census, which was launched in early summer. We'll then cover off some of the reasons why both of these organizations have chosen to automate data publication. We'll give you an overview of Cantabular, which is the software that underpins both of these systems for their flexible dissemination, as it's called. We'd like to give you a sense of what's happening next because we're not resting, we've got loads to do. And finally, and very importantly, we'll have a section for question and answers where you can ask questions and we'll try and answer them at the end of the webinar. So welcome everyone. We have National Statistics Institutes represented today, intergovernmental agencies, government departments, and from all over the globe. So wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Just some housekeeping items. Your cameras and microphones are switched off. Really, this is to prevent distraction. And the event is being recorded as well. We're using Slido for the interaction for question and answers. And to use that facility, all you have to do is to click on slido.com and type in the number 319-1066. And maybe one of my colleagues could also put that in the text in the chat window for this Google meeting. And finally, if you'd like, you can either mention our event today or maybe afterwards when you go away and reflect. And you can post something on that product called X, formerly known as Twitter, using the handle @Cantabular1. And with that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Mike Thompson, who leads the development for Cantabular. Mike, is it okay if I hand over to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Back in March of this year, the Office for National Statistics launched this new product, Create a Custom Dataset, which allows a user to build their own cross-tabulation of census data direct from microdata on the fly. This was a new innovation for the UK Census, and that is powered by our software Cantabular, and it was launched on the 29th of March this year. And then a few months later, the Northern Ireland Statistical Research Agency published their own equivalent product called the Flexible Table Builder, and again, that's powered by our software Cantabular that was launched back in June. The difference between those two projects is that the ONS used our kind of powerful, flexible API to build their own user interface on top of our software, whereas NISRA used Cantabular's own user interface, which is part of our software suite. So they both are powered by Cantabular, which allows you to build your own cross-tabulation. It's created in real time from microdata. We have automated disclosure checks in the software that check a user's query before it's run to make sure that it's not going to be overly disclosive, and then check tables after they've been created for disclosure issues and suppress them if they are too disclosive. And this means that for the ONS and NISRA, there are now hundreds of millions of possible tables being released from the census data this time around, which is in contrast to maybe only thousands of tables in the past. So they're getting a lot more value out of the census for their economy and their society. The metadata for these tables is pieced together when the table's built, because obviously these tables aren't being made by hand, so all the relevant metadata has to be pulled from a structured format. And then all of that data and metadata is put together in the outputs, the Excel files, the CSV files, and so on, that are generated on demand. And the ONS and NISRA call this flexible dissemination. We also like to think of it as automating data publication. And that's really what we're trying to do for organizations here, is to go straight from the structured data and structured metadata in the source all the way through to publication, everything automated as much as possible. And so we're going to talk now about why you'd want to automate data publication. So the first reason is speed. So this is a quote from Jen Wolford, who's a director at the ONS. And she said that this new product, Create a Custom Data Set, has allowed the ONS to release billions of statistics far more quickly than ever before. And just to give you a sense of how fast that is, in the 2011 census, it took the ONS 4 or 5 years to release all of their outputs. But this time around, it's taken about 2 years, or a little over 2 years, so about twice as fast as before. The second reason, along with speed, is flexibility. So this new software, powered by Cantabular, puts the power in the hands of users to find and download combinations of data they're most interested in. So it's one thing to have the data available really fast, but it's another thing to give users the power to build their own outputs and to meet their own needs in a sort of unanticipated way. And then finally, it sort of fits in with this idea of reproducibility. So in the UK, there's a big push towards reproducible analysis in statistics. The reason being for that is that it's more efficient, you can get more throughput, and it's easier to kind of make sure that things are at a kind of quality level. And Cantabular really kind of fits in with this agenda of trying to automate and make outputs as reproducible as possible. So a bit more of an introduction to Cantabular and how it works. So Cantabular helps you to deliver more data faster with automated data publishing. We help organizations protect privacy. We can help improve efficiency. Our software is easy to use and accessible, so all sorts of different people out on the internet can access it and use it. And we also have support for multiple languages, and I'll be showing a bit more of that later on. How it works under the covers, as it were, is that we load up or we give organizations the software, Cantabular, and then they can load up their own microdata into the software. And then we have a series of algorithms that run over the data. So this diagram here shows a user making a query on an interface. Maybe it's a user interface or an API. That query is first checked by our disclosure rules. Then if the query is allowed, a cross-tabulation algorithm will run over the underlying microdata and produce a table. The table is then perturbed, it has noise added to it, and that's all kind of configurable. That the extent of that perturbation is configurable by the organization using the software. Then the perturbed tables are run back through the disclosure rules, which check whether there's any disclosure issues. And if there are, then the tables can be suppressed, and otherwise they can be released to a user. This disclosure rules component is something that we've created. It actually uses our own domain-specific language, and it allows organizations to write their own rules. So rather than us having to manage the rules and understand them all, that's something that is fully within the control of the client organization. So how that fits together from a technical point of view is we have a data service that does all that sort of cross-tabulation and perturbation and rules checking. And that's the sort of the most secure bit of the software that we keep very secure. We also have a metadata service that kind of sits alongside it, complementary, and they both feed into a unified API, which in turn powers our user interface. So the data service holds the actual kind of microdata and also structural metadata that describes that. And then the metadata service holds reference metadata that explains the data and also can contain translations if you want all of that data available in multiple languages. These different components of the software can be deployed in different ways. So the ONS and NISRA are running that in their cloud environment. It could also be run on premises, and also, we would be happy to host that for organizations as well in our own cloud environment. So I'm now going to do a bit of a demo of the software in practice. So hopefully you can all see this. This is the Northern Ireland Statistical Research Agency's flexible table builder for Census 2021. We'll share a link for that at the end of the presentation. So here I can build a custom table, or I could search through ready-made tables, which are sort of like predefined queries onto custom tables. So if I want to build a custom table, I first have a choice of statistical population. I'm going to choose people. Then I have a choice of geographic area. So for census data, geography is very important. So the first choice is, how do I want to break this down? We've got a number of different geographies here in Northern Ireland, and this is the most detailed one. It's got 4,000 or so data zones. We can see a bit more about it here. This text is coming from Cantabular's metadata service. So we see the reference metadata here and the structural metadata underneath. I'm going to choose local government districts. And then after I've made that selection, I have a choice of which of those areas do I want to get data for. So I could get data for all of them, or I could search for a particular government district by name. So I could do something like this and then add that to my query. And now I'm getting data just for one of those areas. But actually, I'm going to get data for all of them. And then I have a choice of topic variables. So I could choose a classification of age. So I've done a search here, and I've got all the variables back that match that string. I'm going to look at age, and then I have a choice of lots of different classifications of age. And these are the classifications that NISRA have decided to make available to their end users for different use cases. And if I'm not sure what the difference is between those, I can use this information icon to see the classification and the categories within it, and figure out what the best one for me is. I'm going to look at this 8-category classification, and then I'm going to continue. And then I'm going to add country of birth. And I'm going to choose this 9-category classification. And again, I can see the difference and find the one that's right for my needs. And finally, I'm going to add a classification of economic activity. So I'm going to try, first of all, adding this really detailed classification here, which has got 14 categories. So if I click on there, you'll notice that over here on the right, I'm getting this feedback here that's telling me that 15 of the 26 local government districts I'd selected are passing confidentiality checks. So 11 of them have been suppressed, and I can see which ones are missing. The reason this has happened is that in the background, I was showing that diagram earlier of Cantabular doing the checks on a tables with our disclosure rules component. And what's happened is the user interface has sent off this query for a table, local government district, by age, by country of birth, by economic activity. And Cantabular has created the table, it's added perturbation and checked all the tables, and it's come back and said, you can get data for 15 of those areas. And that happens in the blink of an eye while I'm making this change. So you can see here I'm changing to a lower classification, and I'm getting that feedback almost straight away. So we've worked very hard to make this fast so that we can give users that kind of experience. Now I've reduced the detail in economic activity. I'm getting data for all the areas, so I'm going to carry on. And now I've built my table. I've got a summary of it here. I can see the details of the table, and if I wanted, I could just download it straight away. But I'm going to, first of all, filter the data a little bit, because actually some of it isn't relevant to me. Because I'm interested in economic activity, I'm only interested in some of these age groups. So I'm going to filter out people who aren't in the working age population. And I'm also going to filter out people who are economically inactive. And once I've done that, I can then save and return, and I've got a slightly simpler table. And then I can pivot my table. So by default, we provide data in this one observation per row format, which is also known as tidy data, and which is the easiest form if you're going to be using that data in sort of data analysis software, such as R or Pandas or that kind of stuff. For my use case, I want to get a nice spreadsheet. So I'm going to change these variables a little bit. So I'm going to do that. First of all, I'm going to move economic activity down here, and then I'm going to move age next to it. And there I've created this neat little table that's showing me for each country of birth, for each local government, a breakdown of the economically active population by age. And then when I'm happy with that, I can save and return and download the data. So I can download as Excel, CSV, and I can get some metadata as well that's more machine readable. So if I download that Excel, what happens here is this Excel file, as I sort of indicated earlier, it's not created manually, it's created on the fly automatically based on the user selections. So if I click there and download it, You probably couldn't see that, but it downloaded very fast. And actually earlier today, I added that to Google Sheets so I could look at the data and show that to you. So here is that data open in Google Sheets, and we can see that the Excel file has a cover sheet, and this is pulling data through from Cantabula's metadata service. So all of this content is loaded into there, and then we have the ability to, even though this Excel file is created on the fly automatically, to populate the cover sheet from the metadata source. And then we can also look at the data, which is automatically created in that pivoted format, and with this, with the freeze panes, so that we can keep the headers in view as we're looking at the data. So that's a quick run through of Cantabula's user interface and getting access to data and the kind of the idea of automating data publication that's behind it. A couple of other things that I want to show before we move to questions. The first is that another version of Cantabula that is out on the internet is this this website that I'm showing now. It's an instance of Cantabula that is loaded with the 1911 Ireland census. So it's a historic census, and it's over 100 years old, and it contains safe data. So it's all, basically everyone in this data set is dead. So we don't need to worry about privacy protections. And so what we instead do is we allow cross tabulations of that data. But the thing that we've done to this website recently, in fact, we launched it today, is that we've enabled Irish language translations of this whole site. So we worked with a translator and we did some automated translation to make this available. And this is partly as a kind of interesting resource that is, never been available before, but also to demonstrate Cantabula's multi-language capabilities. And we can see here that not only is the website text translated into Irish, but also all the metadata for the variables and so on is as well. So the last thing I want to show is that because Cantabula has an API that allows that same kind of flexibility that you get in our user interface to be accessed through an API, you can build other kinds of applications on top of it. So this is a mapping application that we created to illustrate the power of that API for the Northern Ireland census. So here I'm looking at a map of Northern Ireland, as you can see, and I'm looking at district to electoral areas, but I could also look at much more detailed geography. And then I can choose any one of these census variables to have a look at. So I could look at car or van availability for households and see where are the households that only have one car or van available in Northern Ireland. And you can see, unsurprisingly, it's in sort of urban areas. But this is something that we created pretty quickly, actually just in a couple of weeks, to show what can be done on top of our API. And as I make these changes to this to show different aspects of the software, of the data, it's actually sending requests in real time off to Cantabula to generate these cross tabulations. So we've worked hard to make it fast and performant. So I'm just going to move back to the presentation. So what's next? Well, we're looking at other use cases and we're talking to different organizations about different use cases. So what I've been showing so far is examples of census data publication with confidential microdata and automated disclosure checks. But we also think there's an opportunity here to do on-demand tabulation of synthetic microdata with the automated checks being used to check for unrepresentative data instead. We also think there's an opportunity for using a flexible table builder in a secure environment for researchers, but maybe those researchers who are less comfortable using R or Python or those sorts of tools, but need a bit more of an interactive, immediate, helpful user interface. And we're also looking at whether we might be able to extend the functionality of Cantabula to produce magnitude outputs as well as frequency tables. And then finally, Cantabula can also be used as a data catalog. So if you've already got tables that have been created and aren't created on the fly from microdata, those can be loaded statically, but still with the high-speed filtering and pivoting and Excel generation that I've just been showing. And actually, we've just been doing some work recently to improve our searching functionality around data catalogs and pre-computed tables with taxonomies. So that is everything that I wanted to cover today. we'll be covering other stuff in the future if you're interested in keeping an eye on our progress. But now I'm going to move over to the Q&A and see what questions we have. Do we have any questions, esteemed colleagues? I see one, which is, can I choose which metadata gets shown in the Excel spreadsheets? Yes, absolutely. We've set up a method of configuring or customizing that cover sheet so that you can pick exactly which metadata fields you want to show. So it's completely configurable.
Maybe we should repeat, Mike, just in case people came in a little bit later, that we're showing the questions in Slido with the number, just in case people missed that as well. Thank you. Thank you, Duncan. Great. Okay, we have another question, Mike.
Okay, yeah, there's one there about whether the Cantabular user interface can get customized with your own branding. So yeah, so I showed two different versions there. I showed the NISRA website, and I also showed this island census, and they both have, it's the same structured user interface, but they have different branding. So we can easily include themes and styles from a client's own, or that match a client's own website, include logos, and we can also extend different pages by adding in chunks of content to pull through specific things from metadata, or to add particular sort of page furniture, you might call it. So in the NISRA example, if you have a look at that website, you'll notice that it's got a custom footer at the bottom. So it's got its own set of links at the bottom for a footer. And that's kind of an example of the kind of customization that we can do. I'm just going to pop a link in there for that. So if you follow that link, you'll see at the bottom of the page an example of a sort of customized user interface there. What are some of the primary factors contributing to the fast speed of the interface? I could let one of my colleagues answer this question, because they'll probably answer it better than me if they are in a position to do so. So I don't know if Duncan, if you're there.
Yeah, I am. So we spent a long time. We've worked on this software for about 6 years, starting off with the premise that we worked initially on the speed. I mean, that was the main problem to solve to start with, in terms of the ONS, who we worked with as a partner for a few years, had a vision of what they wanted to do, but they weren't able to develop the software internally to achieve the level of performance necessary for an interactive table builder. So we were able to work with them, and some of the things that we've done, I guess the main one is to always pay attention to exactly, how much compute time something's costing. But an important factor is to be able to get the data into the right format in order to do cross tabulation. So we have a kind of our own database format. We compile source data into this database format, and then using that database format, we're able to access the data very efficiently, and that's a primary reason for being able to do that. I mean, there's various other things. I mean, we're using sort of software tools that we can leverage to get good performance and to control data representation fairly tightly. So we use the Go language, which in an analogous way to languages like C and C++, and so forth, does enable you to control exactly how, the data representation at the machine level, and that's important to be able to get performance as well. So it's kind of thing where you can't easily do that in a higher level. Some of the high level languages like Python or maybe R or that sort of thing. So I don't know if that covers enough.
That's good. Yeah, thank you, Duncan. And then the last question was about whether the webinar will be available to view later, which it will be. So we'll probably put it up onto YouTube and send out a link. But also feel free, if you don't spot that coming out, then feel free to send us an email at hello@sensiblecode.io to ask for it if we haven't sent it to you.
I'll probably send out a message to everyone as well, Mike, with the link once we've got it ready.
Thanks. There is another question actually that's just crept in there. Can you handle other data than microdata, such as decimals, negative numbers, more than one measure, etc.? Yeah, we can handle more than one measure, multiple measures and decimals currently as pre-computed data, and we're investigating the handling of continuous variables from microdata in the near future. So I think that's all the questions. Unless anyone else has anything else.
Can't see any others, but by all means, Mike, we can say to everyone who's attending, thank you first of all for coming to our webinar today. We really appreciate your time and your attention, and by all means send us an email if there's anything that pops into your head afterwards you'd like to ask us. But watch this space. We will be publishing more blogs. We did publish a lovely blog following the launch of the NISRA website. That's on Cantabular.com. It's the top blog in there, so you might want to take a look at that. But we will follow up with the link to the recording of this event. So thank you all for coming, and have a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. Take care. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.